What is up, everybody? Welcome back here to the TDR show. It is just me, your host, Kevin Coleman. And today I am walking you through my mid-year rookie 2026 Dynasty Big Board. So this is an article I created a few years ago when I was working over at a bigger company. And I used to do basically a big board every week, just rank the top 36 athletes in the 26 class or the 25, 24, 23 class and look at kind of how it's breaking down right now. So this is a 12 team super flex kind of format, PPR tight end premium. We're going to be diving through the top 36 players on my big board. I'm also going to be going through a little bit of some spotlights of some guys that I like in each round, one player each round, and then just kind of talk about general thoughts of the class. Like, hey, where's the quarterbacks? Where's the running backs, wide receivers, tight ends? Where's some values out there? And then we're going to wrap this thing up with, hey, what are some picks worth right now based on your dynasty league? So stick with us here. If you're on the podcast, we appreciate you. If I'm on YouTube, it's been far too long since I've done a single video here for you guys. So I'm glad to hop on and talk a little football. All right, so let's talk a little football right now. So we're going to break down my top 36. So you can see it on the screen if you are listening on the podcast. We're going to start with the first round. And really, just generally speaking, I do it based on kind of like rounds, right? 12, 24, 36, first, second, third round. There is a lot that can change, right? So I know I'm going to get the comments in the old chat, okay, talking, you missed this guy, probably, right? I think that when you go into it, I try to get as many of these athletes as I can. And I try to weigh these rankings based on what I think the projected draft capital is going to be, right? Now, if you want a more in-depth breakdown, I wrote like a 2,000-word column on this big board. You can find it below on our Substack. But this is generally the Cliff Notes version, or should I say the Chat GPT version here of my guys here. So let's talk about first 12 picks here. I had Jeremiah Love as my number one player on my big board, running back Notre Dame. Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver at USC, is at 2 for me right now. Jordan Tyson is at 3 for me, wide receiver at Arizona State. Carnell Tate, wide receiver at Ohio State, he's at 4. He's been a riser this year. I had him in the first round at the beginning of the year, but he is definitely getting up in that top 5 asset area. Ty Simpson, first quarterback off the board at Alabama at number 5. Dante Moore, Oregon quarterback at 6. Jonah Coleman sitting there at running back 2, out of Washington at 7. Fernando Mendoza, he is the quarterback in Indiana. He's at 8 for me. Jeremy Bernard is at 9, Alabama wide receiver. 10 is Jadarian Price out of Notre Dame. He's the backup to Jeremiah Love. Justice Haynes, Michigan running back at 11. And then Lenore Sellers comes in there at 12. We're going to talk about Lenore in a deep dive here. But that's kind of how my first 12 picks are kind of shaping out. Now, in terms of like the format, this is a Superflex tight end premium. Premium's pretty small, right? 1.5, just trying to keep it kind of in the middle for you guys out there in Dynasty leagues. And when you're talking about tiers, for me personally, just off the top, Jeremiah Love is pretty much right now the prospect I would probably put in his tier to himself, right? We've talked about these last few years. Ashton Jeanty was in that range last year, depending on what you thought of the quarterbacks or depending on what you thought of, what the other positions there. I know Tet, he went up and down last year as well. Travis Hunter was up and down last year. But this year, Jeremiah Love to me is kind of in that category. Now, I think that as a whole of this group, it's not as many, I don't want to say cornerstone assets, but just guys that you want to build a team around, right? I think there's very, very pluggable guys from this rookie class that can help you win in your dynasty leagues. I don't know how many cornerstone athletes there are, but I will say my number 2, Mekhi Lemon, sitting right there. He's close, right? Mekhi is at a hell of a year. Those 3 wide receivers, I think, have separated themselves from the pack right now. Obviously, haven't declared yet, and also testing numbers, all those things are going to come out. But right now, I think Mekhi, Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, I could consider Carnell Tate maybe being the first wide receiver off the board. I mean, he's having a hell of a year for Ohio State again. He was solid last year, plays with Jeremiah Smith, but has had some numbers this year better than Jeremiah Smith. And so I think those 3 guys kind of have put themselves in that category. And then it's basically pick your poison at quarterback. Now, there's no basically guarantee Dante Moore's coming out, right? I think that's one of those things you got to know. There's no guarantee Fernando Mendoza's coming out, right? And if you like Lenore's up there, I'd understand that. If he does declare, he probably would be a top 6 asset in this class there. I think from a whole, though, the first 12 guys, you really start seeing that tier after 4. And then it comes down to the quarterback. And if you believe that Ty Simpson is a guy, he's going to go number 1 overall. You probably put him in that tier, right? That top 5 or 6 assets tier there. But this is why I also think mid to late first right now, I mean, I don't mind trading away. We'll talk about it for some contending pieces, right? Some guys out there that you can go grab to win your league. Next 12 on the board, Kenyon Sadiq. He's sitting there at 13 for me, tight end out of Oregon. Casey Concepcion is at 14, wide receiver out of Texas A&M. Jaden Maivia out of USC is the quarterback. He's sitting there at 15. Junior, though, no, he probably will go back to school, but I did want to put him on there because he's having a pretty good year. Denzel Boston, wide receiver out of Washington's at 16. Katron Allen, running back out of Penn State at 17. Jacoby Lane, wide receiver at USC at 18. Damon Claiborne, running back out of Wake Forest. Not a lot of people know Claiborne, but I definitely wanted to kind of give him a shout out on here. Elijah Sarah, I think is how you say it, wide receiver out of Indiana at 20. 21, Nick Singleton, running back out of Penn State. Probably my biggest faller of the season so far. And we'll get into that outside the quarterbacks. But Singleton definitely has struggled this year. And it's one of those things where he's going to have a hell of a combine testing numbers because he probably is going day 2 last year. If he would have came out as a junior, came back as a senior, and Penn State's just been awful. Chris Bell has been a big riser among draft circles out there, wide receiver at Louisville. He's sitting at 22 for me. Darius Taylor's at 23, running back out of Minnesota. I have a hard time thinking he's going to come out. I think he's going to go back to school for his senior season. But nonetheless, his production has been there when he's been healthy, and I can't just throw him to the wayside like some people. And in 24, Isaiah Sategna, the third. I forget. I'm going to mess up that. Some Oklahoma fans are going to be mad at me. Wide receiver at Oklahoma. I've been on him since he freaking was a recruit, top 20 guy, going to Arkansas. I loved him going there. Like, he was around that 20 to 30 range, depending on what you looked at for the 247 rankings. But he's had a really good year for Oklahoma. So that kind of wraps up the next 12 of my board. And, I'm going to obviously talk about a couple of these guys and highlight them. I will just say that it is a chore to rank some of these guys in this range. I would say after Lenoris, after that 12 spot, you really start picking your poison. And you just start saying, hey, these are guys I project to be NFL guys. Because I will say this, some of these guys just don't have the production needed, right? Singleton has not produced this year. He has produced his previous 3 years. So you have to really take into mind, okay, based on those first 3 years, where do I put him at? Do I drop him way down the board? Do I have him in the middle because he still can produce? It's a very, very hard line with these rankings. That's why they're so fluid. But I will say, when you're looking at the classes all too, the wide receiver group is pretty solid. Jacoby Lane could be very solid, very contested catch, X-type guy. Denzel Boston, very versatile, inside out, can do a lot of different things out there in Washington. Elijah has done great. Chris Bell has looked really good for Louisville, who might make the playoff, right? If they went out when the ACC, they could be there. So a lot of different skill sets here. And I think the biggest question mark among this group is the running back group. I think the running back class right now has an elite with Jeremiah Love, and there's tons of question marks after that. And in my next 12, Max Clary out of Ohio State, tight end. That's an NFL projection. Has not done shit at Ohio State because tight ends at Ohio State, they don't produce because they got elite wide receivers all across the board. Doesn't mean that Max can't be a good NFL pro, especially what he did at his production at Purdue. But he is definitely down there a little bit. I like to put him on here because I do project him to be a very solid pro. Eric Singleton at Auburn. We'll see what happens there. They just fired their head coach this weekend. We're going to see kind of what that means for Singleton. Hasn't had the year that you expect, but they just doesn't have the quarterback, right? And Cam Coleman's had a down year as well there. The question is going to be, what does Singleton do? I think he's athletic enough to come out. I do think he might find a new team. Hollywood Smothers at NC State is having a very underrated year this year. Bryson Washington, running back out of Baylor, same thing. Sawyer Robinson at 29, quarterback out of Baylor. He's going to go day 2, but I swear he's going to find himself on a team. If he gets out there, he can sling it, right? And he's going to sling it to the other team too, but he can produce. Like, I think that there's production there. He's a very high-valued backup target. Chris Brazil the second from Tennessee. He's at 30 for me. Very solid year. Tennessee wide receivers are just very, very tough to project at that next level because that offense. Emmett Johnson, running back out of Nebraska. 32 is Wayman Jordan, running back USC. He got hurt though in the Michigan game, and we'll see when he comes back, and that's going to be an interesting case because I think he was on level to probably come out this year, but getting injured, might go back to school, JUCO product, junior. That's interesting there. Jack Injuries hasn't seen the success he had at Cal at Texas, but very solid tight end. Tight ends, as we know, you can't use the production that they have in college there. Eric McAllister, wide receiver TCU, has been pretty productive this year. He's a guy to kind of watch on your radar. I put Zachariah Branch on here from Georgia because he's had a pretty good year this year. ADOT is freaking terrible, though. I mean, they're bubble screens, but he's caught a lot of different things for them. Very sure-handed this year, which you like to see. And thing with Branch is he's a special teams guy. So he's going to definitely kind of elevate an offense in that range too. And then CJ Baxter, running back out of Texas, I still think has a ton of potential. He could have a very, very good stretch here. Texas is kind of on a run right now. They beat Georgia. Maybe they're back in the playoff contention. Baxter could lead them there. Maybe they beat A&M. Like, there's a lot of things that could happen to break CJ Baxter's way. So that's the top 36. Now, what I wanted to do too is I kind of want to just kind of go over, just general thoughts by position, right? So let's talk about quarterback. The 2026 class quarterback kind of room has been a mess, right? It's a free fall. That's what I kind of wrote about in my column. Arch Manning was supposed to be there. Drew Aller, Cade Klubnik could possibly be there, but they all kind of cratered down. Manning's looked better, but he's coming back for his senior year. I'd have a hard time imagining him coming out. Klubnik and Aller, man, they completely fall off. Aller, season-ending injury. Klubnik got banged up too, but just hasn't progressed, was really bad there. And so we've seen some guys rise. Ty, Fernando, Dante Moore. You've seen those guys kind of do that. But, I mean, they could go, Mendoza and Moore could go back to school. So from a perspective of like the 2026 class, there's a hit to their overall depth, right? Especially if a couple guys return. If you're relying on this quarterback group to fill those holes, you need to make some other plans from a super flex perspective, right? Now, there's always guys that pop off in the pre-draft process and all of that. So I'm not going to sit here and say they're all terrible. All I'm saying is, like, there are some guys in that veteran range, or Dak Prescott comes to mind, where, if you have a first, let's say it's a mid, and you're like, hey, I really need that quarterback now and for the next couple of years, I would hitch my wagon with Dak Prescott over some of these guys in this class. Running back, there's really solid depth. Doesn't really have that star power, right? Love is versatile. He can be that guy if he wants to be a 3-down guy. I think there are question marks about Love's profile for the most part. He's solid, but can he, have the volume? Is he going to be able to kind of, be a 3-down workhorse guy? I think he can. But outside of that, man, not a ton, right? So, like, there's no clear-cut second-round locks right now. I don't think there's a first-rounder lock at all. But with Love, I could see late first for sure if a team falls in love with him. The one guy I really like is Jadarian Price, but I don't even know if he's going to come out. He'll probably return to school and be the guy at Notre Dame next year. So this is a class that's starting to look like a, day 3 picks and committee projections. However, I mean, we've seen these guys, Rashard Smith, we've seen Kamani Vidal, like we've seen some of these guys pop off anyway. So really what you're looking for here is, 3-down skill set, pass catching skill set. And I think the running back position is incredibly hard to rank in November. But once we start getting like the pre-draft stuff, we start hearing kind of the things that teams want to use them as, that's when we're going to start seeing kind of these guys fall, rise up a little bit. But overall, depth-ish, but lacking that star power. It really has. I would say, from a personal perspective and just from a rankings perspective, wide receiver is the biggest winner of the cycle so far. Because at the beginning of the year, I thought we felt like this position was underwhelming. We didn't really have the production there. But I think we got 3 legitimate first-round, locks right now. Mekhi Lemon, Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate. They all look like future wide receiver ones right now. Whether they can be wide receiver ones on their own teams, I don't know, right? Mekhi could be a very strong wide receiver 2, possibly 1. I think Jordan Tyson is a 2, very solid 2. And I think Carnell Tate is the interesting one. He could have that ceiling as that wide receiver 1. But when you look at it overall and you kind of go through some of the guys I have ranked, Jeremy Bernard is a very solid player. I wrote a big profile on him. I mean, he has, I think, 0 to 1 drops this year, just been sure-handed. They call him the next Debo, right? That's what I kind of wrote about. They said, hey, he could be used in a lot of different facets. That's fun. KC Concepcion, if he comes out, he could be an incredible piece in an offense. Denzel Boston as well. Jacoby Lane. Now, the thing I will say about the wide receiver class, they are winners, but I will say wide receiver 2s, right? I think that they have all traits to be wide receiver 2s. And if you get a hit on a guy and he becomes a wide receiver 1, you're excited about that. But this is more of a wide receiver 2 class, but solid group and a deep group. And before the season, we weren't talking like that. Before the season, we were talking about like, this group probably the weakest of the group just because we haven't seen that production yet. Well, they smashed the production profiles that we want for a lot of these guys. So there's depth. The depth is impressive in this group, as it always is for wide receivers. I mean, this is a wide receiver driven league. These are wide receiver driven offenses. So we're going to see this a lot, but that is something to, kind of know there. And in tight end, the biggest word I put for tight ends right now is fine. Right? Sategna is probably the potential tight end one in this class, but I don't know if he's going to declare. I mean, and he's small, right? Listed 6'3", 240. Is he really that? Or is he 6'1", right? Is he Isaiah Likely, or is he a legitimate tight end option at that next level? There's some other depth worth monitoring, though. I talked about injuries. Michael Trigg has been one of my guys for years, it seems like. He's out there from Baylor. Tanner Kozal from Houston is a solid piece. I really like him out there at Houston. But I don't think anybody separated themselves as a day one or even early day two talent. Right. And that's the thing with the tight end group. We're back to normal with some of these tight ends. We don't see the Warrens, Brock Bowers of the groups now. Now it's more of like, okay, what are these guys going to do for day two? Can they rise up? Right. Think of like a Theo Johnson type who's doing very well right now with Jackson Dart at quarterback. That's the kind of development pieces you're looking like in this tight end class. Now, why I would go over this. So that's my top 36. And it was kind of my general thoughts about the class. Like, hey, these are kind of how I would look at kind of each position as they go through. Now, the one thing I did want to do is kind of go through some of the main players in this group, right? Guys that we should talk about in terms of maybe, big question marks for each round. In that first round, I talk about Lenore Sellers a little bit, but let's go deeper into the numbers. 123 to 204 this year, 1,500 yards passing, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. On the rushing side, 88 attempts, 425 yards, 3 touchdowns. South Carolina has been a dumpster fire. He got banged up a little bit, had that concussion. Offensive line is bad. Weapons aren't great. Harbor is okay. But outside of that, you're really looking at some guys that just haven't lived up to expectations. But here's the thing with Sellers. When you're looking at kind of some of the numbers from a PFF side, 65.4 passing grade, not amazing. ADOT 9.7, big time throws 10. Turnover worthy plays, especially after this last week and where he had 2 interceptions, over 3.3%, not great. And then time to throw is over 3.2. So I think part of that time to throw issue is his offensive line, him trying to do things with his legs. And that's what he is, right? The raw talent is there. 6'3", 6'4-ish, 240, cannon arm, mobility, real creation ability. He's got raw tools. The question is, are those raw tools enough for him to declare, right? And I think that's what you're looking at. I think that he's a rising one. He's a prospect that if he declares, you have to think of him as a top 5. He's Anthony Richardson again. He's that Anthony Richardson question. But I think a better passer. So the one thing I would say about Lenore's, I think he's a better, more nuanced, accurate ball. He has than Anthony Richardson did based on the starts that we saw. So Lenore's has more starts than him as a quarterback. But there's some things that remain, pretty raw with him. Field vision, accuracy, though, can be streaky. It's better than Richardson, but that's not saying much. And then I do think that he uses his legs a little too much when he gets a little bit of pressure, right? And these are all things that young quarterbacks do. So that's why part of me thinks that he's going to come back for another year. But also, what if a team gives him the Anthony Richardson-like promise, right? Hey, we see top 5 potential in you. What if a QB needy team is sitting there, right? Do the Saints pass on Lenore Sellers? I don't think they can afford to, right? Do the Jets pass on Lenore Sellers if he comes out? I don't think they can afford to. So if he declares, I think he immediately vaults himself in the top 5 conversation in Superflex. He has to. I think just based on his talent, what his ceiling can be. But I still think I think he transfers. I think Miami would be a great fit for what they did with Cam Ward as well. And maybe he could be the guy that gets Miami over the hump finally and gets Cristobal to the playoff, or even, an ACC championship appearance. I think that could be Lenore's in that range. I think he has the most upside of any prospect in this group that I just showed you in that top 36. But there's a lot of, rawness there. There's a lot of question marks in terms of what he could be as a quarterback. And then this just feels like that movie we've been watching the last few years of quarterbacks, Malik Willis, Anthony Richardson, some of these guys that are even Kenny Pickett you could throw in there, of guys that, hey, have that rushing ability, have kind of athleticism. Trubisky, for example, those type of guys. Those could be the guys that you're like, hey, do I hitch my wagon to this guy? Sellers is probably the best of them all. That's why I think you tend to. But his range of outcomes is volatile. That's all I'm going to say about him in terms of that. Now, the other guy that I really like is Casey Concepcion. He's at A&M this year, and he transferred over there. This year, I mean, A&M is a top 3 team in the country. There might be the SEC champions this year, and he's looked really good. 36 catches for 545 yards and 7 touchdowns. PFF grades, 81.1 receiving grade. Yak per reception sitting there at 6.3. ADOT 14.0. I mean, they are pushing the ball. This is the one thing that the Aggies like to do. They will push the ball downfield. Him and Mario Craver have had a hell of a year, and Casey's that guy. They like it over there at 14.0. There's ADOT. They love pushing the ball to him. Only 4 drops on the year. You probably want to see that go a little bit down. Wide percentage, he's sitting there at 67%, and slot at 32%. It's in that 5'11", 190. It's kind of nice, right? He's not just that slot guy, probably like Makai is going to be. I think Casey can kind of play inside and out. You love that versatility around him in terms of what he can do. And here's the big number. 31 first downs this year. I mean, that's pretty incredible when you think he has 36 catches already. And you have to like that just from a stats perspective and what he's been able to put on the field. I think he's their best wide receiver. I know Craver's had a good year, but Casey's kind of been the guy they go to when you look at him against, LSU, a touchdown, 45 yards there against the big games. Notre Dame, 82 yards, Auburn, 113 yards there. He's looked really, really good this season, and I think that he could possibly declare. The reason why he's still in that second round for me is hey, we still want to see that consistency go up in terms of okay, as the season progresses, what does it look like? He still hasn't hit his best output year, which is his freshman year at NC State, 71 catches, 839 yards that year, but tons of potential. This kid could be a dynamic playmaker at the NFL level, and that's why I think that he could really take that next step. So I do want to highlight him because I think if you can get a guy like Casey in the second round of your rookie drafts, you'd be really excited. I don't know if he's going to declare, and that's probably the biggest thing about this class. Non-declares could kill the value of that second round, right? And so that's also part of it. I'm going to go through some second round picks with you guys as well, just to kind of go over, generally speaking, what we could, expect from those second round picks right now. And then the last guy that I want to mention, and the last guy I kind of want to talk about, I kind of have a love affair for Emmett Johnson right now. Nebraska running back, 5'11", 210, 200, depending on where you look. He's looked really good this year. 175 attempts, 1,000 yards, and 10 touchdowns. He's kind of carried Nebraska. He's their leader, even with Dylan Raiola there, the quarterback. I mean, he's not a flashy dual threat guy. He's not a 4.3 burner type of guy, but he's relentless, man. He has I think it's now 500-yard games this season. He has over 1,000 all-purpose yards with receivings too. He's averaging around 4.5 yards per carry. He adds value in the passing game as well. And the thing is, man, he just is a gamer. And I think that's one of those things we talk about too. Locker room leader, sets tone in tough moments. If he could stay healthy, I'm not saying Emmett Johnson is going to be a first round back, but I am saying he could be a very, very solid day 2, early day 3 type guy that you're looking for when you're talking about depth in the class, right? From a PFF standpoint, 86.9 run grade, 535 yards after contact, 3.06 yards after contact per attempt. So he's definitely breaking tackles, getting there. 53 missed tackles forced already on the season. Over 32 10-plus explosive runs. So we're not talking about just a thumper, right? We're talking about a guy that can hit that next level. I think it's interesting to see what his 40 time is be. I'd be interested to see what Christian Williams here at TDR thinks in terms of his ratings. He does a really good job of breaking down what he thinks the RAS scores are going to be, relative athletic scores. And I would be interested to see what Emmett's going to get in there. I think maybe he can get a 4.45 in that range. And if he does that, that's day 2. I think he can be a day 2 guy there. Elusive rating, you like to see a little higher. He's at 94.1. You want to see that over 100. But Emmett Johnson, to me, is one of those guys that should be getting a little bit more love than he is out there in the running back and scouting areas and scouting. Just okay, what do we expect with him? What do we like about him from a running back standpoint? I think he could be a 3-down guy. Got to stay healthy, though. I think that's the big thing for him. We'll see if he can finish this year off pretty healthy. So those are my spotlights. Those are my 3 spotlights of the top 36. Obviously, I went into more detail in my article. If you want to break that down, you can become a Substack subscriber. It's $5 a month. That's pretty cheap. considering what prices of inflation is right now. Or if you're on our Patreon, you get all of our content for free. Basically, if you just join the Patreon, you get all the writing, article rankings, all of that. And I dove into more of these prospects. I just wanted to pick the top 3 for YouTube and for the podcast. Keep it kind of shorter this time. But those are some guys definitely keep an eye on if you're not kind of looking at the rookies yet. All right, let's do this real quick. Let's go through what first are going for right now based on leagues out there. 2026 early first. You're seeing Garrett Wilson out there, kind of. That's a tough one. Some people believe in Garrett Wilson still. Some people don't, right? So think about the class. Where would you put Garrett Wilson in the wide receiver group? I think he'd be right there with wide receiver 1 with Mekhi Lemon. But again, we've seen him enough. People might be like, I'm kind of out on them. Saquon is sitting there. That's a tough one. I actually called him a sell last week in my Dynasty article that I wrote. If you can get early first for him, plus something else, obviously he's worth more than just a first. I definitely think I would consider kicking that train a little bit. Jackson Dart is the interesting one because I think that if you're a QB away in Superflex, or if you're like right there that pivoting, like, hey, can I kind of go get a guy like Dart where he's been top 5 fantasy points per game recently, and he's got that rushing combo, and he's pretty raw as a passer, but he's developing in that offense. I don't know if that coaching staff's going to be there, but I would take him over any of these other quarterbacks outside Lenoris in that first round. So if you don't think Lenoris is going to come out and you need a quarterback for next year, I don't mind giving up an early first for Jackson Dart. Ladd McConkey is also in that range, and so is George Pickens. George is the tough one, though, with CeeDee Lamb being back and kind of what that looks like. But that's generally speaking what some early firsts are looking like. Mid-first, when you're looking at kind of what's going on there, Dak Prescott sitting there, CJ Stroud, Breece Hall, Brock Purdy, A.J. Brown, all with different kind of, red flags in their profile. But I talked about Dak all offseason. I said, hey, he's my top veteran buy. He's priced too low on Keep Trade Cut. And he's kind of locked himself in as QB1, another top 12, right? A QB1 in his position. When you look at over the last, 4 games of the year before the Denver game, he had 14 touchdowns, no turnovers. He was averaging about 26 fantasy points per game. Denver game, he was all right. Obviously wasn't great in terms of that. We recorded before he plays Arizona, but he's a QB1. Like when Dak is healthy, he's actually playing MVP type. And with the offensive line kind of improving, CeeDee coming back healthy, with Pickens being there now, Jake Ferguson, like when you're looking at the offense and with Javonte doing well, Dak is a QB1. And if you can get him for a mid-first and ride him out for the next couple of years, you do that. That's how you value. That's how you win your leagues. Now, when you're looking at late first right now, this is all across the board. This all is league dependent. But T. Higgins, Daniel Jones is sitting in there, DK, Jalen Waddle, Zay Flowers is sitting in that range. I wouldn't mind going after a little Jalen Waddle to finish the year off in that late first area, because I think that he can definitely return you value for the next couple of years as well. When you're thinking of what Miami's offense is going to be, they're going to get rid of their head coach. They're going to get rid of Tyreek Hill. Waddle's probably the guy. But if they even move on from Waddle, let's say they reshuffle, I still think that you're getting a guy that's going to go to an offense where he can be a wide receiver 2 for a late right first. I'm taking that. So Waddle to me is one of those guys you should definitely kick the tires on a little bit in terms of his value there. Now, when you're going over what the seconds look like right now and kind of talking about, who are some guys that maybe target, Zach Charbonnet is out there, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, Terry McLaurin, but he's injured, so be careful there. Rico Dowdle's an interesting one because I do think he's going to get some run down the stretch. If you need a running back, and based on the running backs of this group, and you're looking at a guy that you want for maybe a 2-year run, Rico Dowdle is a perfect pick. If you can get him for some type of second plus maybe an asset, it's not a bad deal to go get that and get Rico. Woody Marks is going around that range. Alvin Kamara, Mike Evans, obviously he's injured, but if you want to kind of splash, maybe he'll come back at the end of the year. Jaden Reed, Rondale Robinson are all guys out there. I think to me, Dowdle really stands out among this group of being those seconds that you can definitely kind of grab and say, hey, that could be a league winner for me down the stretch. It seems like they're going away from Hubbard a little bit. They're giving Dowdle more chances in the red zone. That's a guy that you should be able to definitely target there. So that's my big board. That's the top 36 prospects right now, mid-season-ish in college football and in the NFL. I try to throw it out there. We'll be giving these big boards as we go. I will do another one at the end of the season. We obviously do all the rookie content here. We love doing that. Consider joining our Patreon if you like to support us. That's one of the best ways that we could stay in this business. We're independent. We just do this for the love of the game. We don't do this with the big companies. We don't do this for the glitz and the glamour out there. We just do this to help you guys win your leagues. If you play Devy, if you play Dynasty, even redraft, we have redraft articles over on our subject all week. If you just want to support us, we'd appreciate that too. So go check out our content on those places over there. We appreciate you guys listening, either on the podcast, thank you all, or on YouTube. Appreciate you guys. If you are on YouTube, drop some comments. What do you think? Who are some guys I'm high, too low on? As always, be respectful. That's the name of the game. But we appreciate you guys. We appreciate it. Any of you guys listening that are, you're part of our community. You guys mean the world to us. And I'll see you guys in the next video.